Hi, everyone. Okay, we are here. So welcome to the summer issue launch event for Catamaran. And my name is Catherine Segerson, and I'm the founder and the editor-in-chief of the magazine. So I'm really thrilled to do our summer issue launch event. We have 15 people reading tonight, and we've got 6 poets, we've got 5 fiction authors, 2 nonfiction authors, and for the first time we're doing part of our interview tonight. So, but we're going to try to keep it to 1 hour. So it's really exciting to see so many people here, and you can, let me just give you a few instructions on how this all works. You can click this button here to buy the summer issue if you want. To get the new issue if you haven't got it yet. And we can't see you or hear you in the audience, but you can be active with us in the chat room on the side here. So say some nice things. You can even do emojis like clapping hands or thumbs up or anything like that, hearts, when people are reading. And then if you do have some technical issue, the best thing to do is to do like you can ask a question. So down here at the bottom it says ask a question. So that'll go straight to me and I can try to answer it to you directly instead of asking technical questions in the chat room, because I know there's always things that come up. So let's see, this cover, I'm really proud of this beautiful cover. This is by Roland Peterson, and he's sort of a Bay Area legend. He is 95, still painting. And this painting was done in 1960. So it just feels so fresh and relevant and summery. I wanted to mention another person in the magazine, a visual artist, this artist here. See that beautiful? That is Ewa Krepix from Canada. And she does these just tender digital photography with lovely titles. And I worked with her throughout the month. She sent me 20 and I just had to narrow it down to just 3. Sadly, she passed away on June 6th, and she was thrilled to have her work in the magazine. And so I don't know, you can find her images on Facebook or just in really, it's just wonderful that we are able to carry on her legacy in print this way. And one other person was supposed to be with us tonight, Justin Gardiner, who has a really long, wonderful best science and nature writing I've seen in a long time, and it's called Homestead in the magazine. So he broke his femur this weekend, and so sorry to say he cannot be with us either tonight. But in spirit, he's with us, and he'll be able to listen to us later, hopefully. This is recorded, so you can listen to it later. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first reader. Let's see, hopefully everybody can see us. If you can't, I see in the chat, just try to refresh the browser again with the launch event. I'm gonna... Okay. And I will get to these questions as soon as I'm off screen. Okay. All right. So our first reader tonight is Holly Voorsanger. Holly Voorsanger's poem Shut In is the winner of the 8th annual George Hitchcock Memorial Prize for Student Memorial Poetry Prize for students at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where she is a graduating senior majoring in literature and creative writing. She has been writing poems and short stories for most of her life, and she's especially inspired by the contemporary prose poem. Her most recent work has been brought to life with the help of literature professor Gary Young, who she believes has been the catalyst for her artistic improvement. Voorsanger is super excited to have her first publication in Catamaran and to see where poetry will take her. Okay, so hold on just a second. This is interesting. Okay. I need to refresh my own because I'm not seeing the audience anymore for some reason. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Oh, here. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. I'm going to go off screen and try to see if I can get to the audience for some reason.
Okay.
Do you see the audience on your end?
I don't.
Okay.
I just see you.
Okay, I'm going to go.
Hello. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Please bear with us. We're having some technical difficulties, but our last presentation on Crowdcast went really well, so I'm assuming this one will too eventually. No, in the photo behind me, that is Thorsten Veblen. This is my prized possession. It's nice to see so many familiar names here. I know. I know. I'm not sure where Catherine is. Another prized possession. Let's see. Oh, here a poem? Okay. Let's see. Oh, I could read something from the magazine, I guess. I should remind you guys that we're having our first, in-person event since the pandemic began this summer. That we'll have the Catamaran Writing Conference here in Santa Cruz. And it's going to be held at the Pacific Collegiate School on the west side, and people are going to stay in the hotel next door. And there's some great teachers this year. There's going to be Lisa Fugard and Joseph Novakovich for fiction. There's going to be Dan White and Charles Hood for nature writing and nonfiction. There's going to be Joseph Millar and I think Susan Brown for poetry. And then we'll have some interesting guest speakers too. So I think it'll be very nice to be able to meet in person again shortly. Thank you for sending your best tech juju. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see. Well, I guess I could read a poem from the magazine by somebody who couldn't be here tonight. Celia Lissett Alvarez was unable to come, and she has a poem in here called Climbing the Lighthouse. And I'm not sure if anyone can see me right now, but I will read this anyway. It sounds like there are a lot of frozen screens.
My screen is, people should refresh their screens.
Yeah, you could refresh. The tour guide told us the number of steps. This is Climbing the Lighthouse by Celia Lissett Alvarez. She's the author of 3 collections of poetry, and I think we won't have time to hear it after all. Hi, Holly.
Hi. I'm glad we got that figured out. Hi, everybody. Okay, I assume everyone can see and hear me. Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to start with my poem Shut In, which I'm really grateful to have in Catamaran. Thank you so much for publishing me. So yeah, here I go. I guess, well, just some intro. I wrote this poem during quarantine and kind of a little bit of what we've all been feeling, I'm sure. So this is it. You call to tell me it's winter again, and you're tracing the knots in the wood by your bed. You assure me the rest of the world has gone fishing. They're all out there, you swear, picking apart the underbelly of a trout or balancing atop a mossy log. They're taking their shoes off and letting their socks get muddy, or better yet, their bare feet. They're singing to each other in swamp beds and practicing lucid dreaming. The sun is out, or if it's not, they're letting their tongues get wet. But you've got to do the laundry. You're counting the seconds between breaths. You're scratching at the skin of your toes. You're forgetting a name, repeating your own. You ask me, how could this happen? All these people, paying homage to their youth, and you, cracking your knuckles beneath running tap water and wondering if it'll rain. Okay. That was the first one. This is so odd to just be here on screen with no one else. But I'll just go ahead and read the next one. This one's called California Fires, and I don't know if it needs more of an intro than that, if we all lived through that. The sunflowers we all planted together in July are now covered in a coat of milky ash, drooping garden ghosts, no longer open-mouthed, no longer in perpetual prayer. I behead the stems one by one, bite down on something that feels like guilt but hangs heavier, as we teeter in an open casket garden. The neighbor girl, 5 years old, tells me this is the first time she's seen snow. And that's all I have for you, so thank you.
Thank you, Holly. That was great. Okay, our next reader is Rebekah Bloyd. Rebekah Bloyd's brother, who's featured in the piece she's going to read from today, never returned to the Midwest. Bloyd followed in his tracks a couple of decades later. She teaches writing and ecological practices at California College of the Arts. Her creative nonfiction and poems appear widely, and a recent collection is At Sea, published by Finishing Line Press. Please welcome Rebekah Bloyd.
Hi, everyone. You'll let me know if something's amiss, okay? I'm counting on you. Thanks for hanging in for this long. I'll be reading from a longer piece of nonfiction called Blue Eyes Behind Butterfly Glasses. Hitching would get him there, and the money he saved up now would let him stay. Once Gene made it from Ohio to Aunt Mary Jane's in Long Beach, there was still the day-to-day till he would have his own apartment. He'd save money for deposit and for first month's rent, for hamburger, bread, milk, eggs, beer, pot, called Mary Jane, like his aunt. She would keep him in Swiss chard, health nut, said growing your own chard year-round was worth moving to California for. And before all of that, he had to get his ass to the local draft office, get his assignment at a charity or wherever the placement office dreamed up. But it wasn't Vietnam. Before Gene became whoever he would be in California, in spring 1968, he was a substitute teacher in their Ohio country town. Occasionally, a farm kid hung on after the bell rang, asking a question about college life or how the draft really worked. One April day, a girl lingered. Why California? Why not Canada? I'll answer the easy part first, he thought. Want to be able to see my folks now and then. Canada would erase that. She nodded. Why not come to the prom with me? You'll still be here, right? You might enjoy a night out. His brain froze, his tongue with it. He stared at her chestnut hair curled up at the shoulders, at the pale blue fabric covering those shoulders. He forced himself to meet her eyes. That's kind. Let me think about that. She nodded, walked away. How to get out of this? He was 21, almost 22 for Christ's sake. Hours in a gym decorated with streamers, expected to slow dance to Johnny Rivers. 2 days later, he called her using the party line in his parents' farmhouse, listening hard for the telltale clicks that would signal a neighbor was eavesdropping. No clicks. He spoke to her and her alone. She wouldn't see his face, and he wouldn't see hers. Blue eyes behind butterfly glasses. Thank you for asking me. That's very kind, but I'm just a little too old. He heard a small intake of breath. And I'm a terrible dancer. Oh, but I have an idea. Oh? How about dinner and a movie in Dayton? In this town, going to Dayton was like going to the moon, driving an hour away instead of going to the one local theater. I'll think about it. Thank you. He would disappoint this young woman, but perhaps not too badly. He would take her to Dayton, that would be known. He would take her on the same night as the prom. 2001, A Space Odyssey, black monolith, red glowing eye of Hal, Louis XIV bedroom, the wide-eyed infant matching his eyes to theirs. The credits began to roll. They remained in their seats, as did most everyone around them, searching the screen for actors, for places, composers, a handhold. She turned toward him. What just happened? I'm sorry, Kathy. I'm afraid I can't explain, he said in his best Hal voice. She laughed. His mind buzzed. He couldn't wait to hear her start deciphering. Well, let's talk about it in the car, he continued, as they bumped into one another, as well as the other stunned, mumbling witnesses making their way up the theater aisle. Such wonderful weirdness. Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick, you bet. And who was that Ligeti? Was it his, that choral piece, At Once 100 Honeybees and Wraths? The back and forth of interpretations as they drove home, the recalling of details the other had missed or noticed, too. The price of the steak, the movie tickets, the gas, all equaled a delay in having saved enough to set out for California. But sharing an evening with this young woman from Ohio was worth it. Of that he was certain. Although, aside from an extended hello and shared laughter in the hallway during his final week as a substitute, he would never see her again. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebekah. Okay. Our next reader is Doreen Stock. Doreen Stock is a Fairfax, California poet, literary translator, and memoir artist. She recently launched Bye Bye Blackbird by Poetry Box in 2021, which are poems touching her mother's last days, and Tango Man by Finishing Press in 2020. Which is a collection of love poems. And she looks forward to the publication of A Noise in the Garden, which are selected poems forthcoming from Kelsey Books in October of 2021. For more information, she has a website, doreenstock.com. Please welcome Doreen Stock.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start with a piece of translation. And I first met the poet Amparo Casasbella Alcanada in her legal offices in Buenos Aires, introduced to her by the Argentine journalist Marcelo Holot. She received her law degree from the University of Buenos Aires and then specialized in constitutional law at the same university. Her postgraduate thesis on crimes against humanity in Venezuela was titled Los Funerales de Terror. She handed me a small book of poems, and I began translating a few of them, testing the waters. I loved them. When the pandemic hit, Marcelo and I undertook to complete the translation, and the results, Your Excellency, Free Will, a book of poems to be released soon by Prosa American Editores in Buenos Aires. Here's a little proximity of the cover that I just received this week. The poem that was published in Catamaran in Spanish is Mareas, in English, Tides. Que el firmamento apague el oxidado hierro de tu sueño, que ha irrumpido en la noche. That the firmament blot out the oxidized iron of your dream, erupting in the night, like poverties recovered from the past, like those pains that bring us the human race, like the anguish time puts into blood. In your ready arms, in that sublime heart, and the anarchy that has always lifted you to the beam of anguish, to arrive then at this haven of your gestures, which reflect the world, renewed by the love that emerges from your heart. Then perhaps understanding how much one must suffer to love. Your intention to create a life like an oasis of eternity. There are beautiful paintings juxtaposed with the poems in Catamaran, and I'd like to just thank Carla Crawford for the two that are juxtaposed to the two poems that I'm reading. The second poem is a poem that I wrote on the birth of my great-granddaughter. For Elisa, born in December. Years before your father was born, I hiked to a high place in the Sierra Nevada. Freezing cold, little baby, few midget trees clinging to rocks. Years before your grandmother married your grandfather even. Back then, I laid my head down under ringing stars, Elisa, and I slept. I dreamt of my own father's voice. There, in the palm of his hand, which he was holding out to me, was a large, bright orange. Then I climbed down from that high place, took up my pen, and wrote, "My father and the fruit of paradise." Now you have one of those fathers who each day must climb to a very high place under ringing stars to give thanks for you, who came to him midwinter from that garden we only see in dreams. The oranges in my California yard are shivering in their bright jackets under freezing rain today, while you are sunbathing in Miami. May you grow strong and a little wild. May you climb to a very high place and converse with me, your own great-grandmother, someday under ringing stars. Many years after the dream, a man unwrapped its meaning for me. It was a casual conversation. I was bought a bunch of yellow daisies from him. We were so poor in those shtetls, but whenever we knew someone was about to die, we pooled our few coins. We bought that person a bright orange. Why? I asked him. Elisa, you must always ask why. So that man, that woman, could taste something, said the man, as he wrapped up the bouquet of yellow daisies I'd purchased from the world to come. So that man, that woman, wouldn't be afraid. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Doreen. Our next reader will be Michael Alenyikov. Michael Alenikov's Ivan and Misha, published by Tri-Quarterly Books and Northwestern University Press, won the Northern California Book Award for Fiction. He received the Gina Barriot Award, and his stories have been nominated twice for the Pushcart Prize. He has a PhD in clinical psychology and was a cabbie in Boston, Massachusetts. His childhood was spent in New York City's 3 outer boroughs, with 4 years in Tahunga and Santa Monica, California, squeezed in between Bronx and Brooklyn. He lives in San Francisco, California. This is a rare foray into autobiographical fiction, and it's set in Santa Monica. He's delighted to have his work appear again in Catamaran. Thank you, Michael. Uh-oh. Oh dear. Ah, we can see your comment, Michael. Oh, I hope he can get on, because his story in the magazine is beautiful. I'm really looking forward to hearing it. Looks like Catherine is trying to get him on. He's connecting. He clicked accept to join. Catherine, shall we go on to our next reader while Michael's trying to get on? Okay, Catherine's going to invite our next reader, Amy Miller. Catherine, shall I introduce Amy while you're getting her on? I will. Amy Miller will read next her poetry and nonfiction. Has appeared in Barrow Street, Gulf Coast, Tupelo Quarterly, Willow Springs, and Ziziva. Her full-length poetry collection, The Trouble with New England Girls, from Concrete Wolf, won the Louis Award from Concrete Wolf, and her chapbooks include I Am on a River and Cannot Answer, and Rough House. She lives in Ashland, Oregon. Please welcome Amy Miller.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine, for having me. I'm very sorry that Michael is not here right at this moment. I really hope you can get on soon, Michael. I want to start with a poem that is in this fantastically beautiful issue of Catamaran that just came in my mailbox yesterday. I also we do have a lot of really wonderful artwork in this issue. This is my poem that's opposite this beautiful artwork by Tim Stumkey that appears to be a collage that actually fits the poem really beautifully, as you'll hear at the end of the poem. The poem is called After a Week of Cruelties. It is necessary to down some kick-ass drinks with two good friends in a bar we'll all joke about later. Then to hear a choir of high school kids sing a Broadway ballad off the cuff at sundown. A circle of them, obviously on a trip, the bus in view down the block, all beautiful and tearful in their black t-shirts, standing on the sidewalk by my car, while the very necessary moon hangs its half lamp over them in the sky that seemed so out of control this morning. Snow hammering the pass, trees cracked, air acrid with news of a student who took herself out of this life last night. Now, above the parking garage, the necessary arrow of a swallow banks and finds its landing just under the roof, greeted by the small chatter of nestlings. I live in Ashland, Oregon, and that poem is set here. We get a lot of student groups here. And my second and final poem is going to be from a manuscript that I'm working on, which is a series of poems about my sister, whom I had a complicated relationship with through more or less throughout our lives. This poem is called Gun. My sister hides our father like a gun. He's loaded with chemicals, plaques, peptides, and his holster of memory gapes open. He leaves it on the counter, wanders off. She finds him, moves him, worried that our brother wants this gun, since everyone around her is pointing something at her. She lives in a circle of foreign food and keeps saying, "Why don't they speak any English?" She's waving a finger around, the spin you do when you're really drunk, and she says, "Who said that?" And "You keep your hands off him." My brother goes to visit. My father tidy in his bed. The aide saying, "You like meatloaf night, don't you, Jack?" My brother hums, and Dad remembers the words. There's no gun inside our father, just a Rosemary Clooney record. We try to tell our sister this, but she's got a gun in the head. 2 days later, she moves him to another place. She keeps saying, "No, I'm the one who's being safe." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. All right, I'm going to go on to Nicole Endacott. Nicole Endacott is a science writing graduate student at Johns Hopkins University, and she works for an educational nonprofit organization to support gifted youth nationwide. Her writing is inspired by the overlap between her science background and her love of literature. As a native of Los Angeles, California, Endacott is interested in writing about urban ecology and humans' relationship to the natural world. Please welcome Nicole Endacott.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me all right. I will be reading from my essay, which is in Catamaran. It's called They Strut Among Us, and it is about the wild peacocks that have taken over Los Angeles. The writer Flannery O'Connor was a lifelong lover of birds, a passion that began when she gained local fame at just 5 years old for training one of her chickens to walk backwards. When she developed the autoimmune disease lupus, she was confined to her mother's home in Milledgeville, Georgia, for many years before her death at age 39. During that time, she wrote stories, absurd ones, stolen wooden legs, drowning as baptism, and a serial killer who was somehow not the story's villain. She also purchased and tended to peacocks. Peacocks don't sound like your average bird, and they don't move like one either. Their large taloned feet look more dinosaurian than avian. They thump when landing on the hoods of cars. Yes, they do fly, but only when they must and only to short heights. Most of the time, they just strut, a word that feels particular to peacocks no matter the context in which it is used. Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon follows the tumultuous life of Mason Milkman Dead III, a man on a feverish but ultimately fruitless search for wealth. Milkman and another character, Guitar, encounter a beautiful white peacock. When it hops up onto a car, though, Milkman asks why it can fly no better than a chicken. Guitar says, "Can't nobody fly with all that shit. You want to fly, you gotta give up the shit that weighs you down." Guitar is right. The idea of peacocks is not overtly practical. But even though their tails reduce their ability to fly, as well as hide from potential predators, they were not eliminated by natural selection. How can something that reduces survivability have evolved into such an exaggerated degree? This question plagued Charles Darwin, positor of natural selection, to the extent that he once wrote in a letter to a friend, "The sight of a feather in a peacock's tail, whenever I gaze at it, makes me sick." After much distress, Darwin finally conjectured that peacocks undergo sexual selection, meaning that although ornamental tails work against survival, they more than make up for that deficit by providing advantage in the ability to mate. When we admire a peacock's tail, we admire the potential of its legacy. Even for the residents of peafowl-ridden towns, it's difficult to consider their presence and not feel the weight of time and space. Though relatively recent to Southern California, Indian writings about peacocks date back over 2,000 years. In Hinduism, peacocks are seen as symbols of protection and prosperity. In Christianity, they have ties to renewal and immortality. Though peacocks themselves are confined to the space between the ground and a few stories high, as a symbol, they have reached cosmic heights. In the transient Los Angeles area, peafowl may be more established residents than many people who consider themselves natives to the region. Their wanderings force cars to brake halfway up a steep hill. Local dogs are flummoxed by how to categorize them. Homeowners must protect cars and flower beds, clear waste from their driveways, and choose to ignore the unsettling cries. But becoming accustomed to their presence means overlooking their significance. In tumultuous 2021, we need the peacock's reminders, and not just about vanity. After all, it wasn't the soaring birds that fascinated Flannery O'Connor, perplexed Charles Darwin, or adorned Krishna's crown. Peacocks are weighed down by absurdity. If they can survive here, so can we. And that's the second half, but the rest of it is in Catamaran, and I hope you read it. It's a beautiful issue, and I love hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, our next reader will be Mary Tabor. Is it? Yes, okay. Mary Tabor is the author of the short story collection, The Woman Who Never Cooked. which won Mid-List Press's first series award. Her work has recently appeared in Story magazine and many other journals. She is a Council of Independent Colleges visiting fellow, radio interviewer, and columnist on the arts and lives in Los Angeles, California. Please welcome Mary Tabor.
Hi. Hi. The aesthetic of this magazine, stunning in works and artistry, honored and humbled to be here. From the Suitcase, a short story. After June's stroke, Molly had begun having tea with Gertrude during those months of tedious care. All of it fell to Gertrude while June was dying, while Augusta instructed, "Make sure she eats. I'll not have her refusing food." And now Gertrude had buried them both. Augusta with finality, June with the wind in her ears, the perfume of wind in hair, the way she'd always remembered June, who could throw the love of a man across her shoulder like a sweater. Careless, glorious June, who died long before they'd laid her in the ground in that gaping, yowling hole, who died when they put the baby in the suitcase in the attic. June, who'd hoped they would lay the baby between their parents. June, who'd held the maple leaf in her hand at the cemetery. June, who said to the red gold leaves on the plots, "Look, like gold dust." Gertrude thought of the three of them as cut-out paper dolls, held together at the fingertips, felt the pull of the grave as if someone waited only to unfold her shape from the cut-out figures, but out of order because of the disorder they'd made. "Ah, Molly, it is a wonder I still make the chicken. Gertrude, forget the chicken, let's have tea. And those cookies." Molly always had some in the freezer. She called them her Proustian indulgence, said Proust knew stuff that kept her going. Going, gone, thought Gertrude, and saw his finger on the door latch, the white lines in his knuckles. Oh, it was Molly, she wanted to tell, this young, befuddled woman with the heart-shaped face who threw a scarf around her neck in just that careless way June had always done it, with an abandonment that meant the ends were never even and her throat always exposed. Gertrude wanted to get the suitcase down from the attic. With her hand in the pedals, she repeated Molly's words, the way they open in a profusion of petals. Molly reached across the fence, brushed the feathery petals. "You know why I love them," she laughed. "Gertrude, my conspirator." And Gertrude remembered how they'd gotten back in the car because it was not possible. They'd gone home, and June went to the guest room, pulled from the closet the old orange blanket, the one she'd lain under when she was still bleeding from the birth. She'd lain down under the blanket, but on top of the white chenille bedspread. She wouldn't think of disturbing the bed linens. What would Augusta say? Meanwhile, Augusta and Gertrude decided what they had to do. They took the blanket. "Get up, June. You must." June climbed under the bed linens then. Augusta, for once, did not reprimand. They wrapped the infant in the orange blanket, went to the attic, and placed the dead child in the suitcase where all these years it remained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next reader is Hannah Richter. Hannah Richter hails from the humid kingdom of alligator scales and Spanish moss, born and raised under the watchful eye of hurricane season in Miami, Florida. She spends her days telling tall tales, imagining absurd worlds, and negotiating the ever-changing terms of a mutational climate. Currently, she is living, learning, and working as an artist in residence at a new hospitality venture in the heart of New Orleans, Louisiana. Please welcome Hannah Richter.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to be reading the ending of my story, Sunken Mass, which was inspired in part by the fact that the abbreviation SOS stands for Sauce on the Side and also Save Our Souls. So that's where this came from. The people at Stanford, they've called your brain an iceberg, have said that the subconscious lives below the waterline, like an iceberg in which the visible tip merely flirts with the delicious unknown that it camps atop. 90%, they say, of a berg, of a brain, cannot be known or mapped or made legible. Weighed down by its dark and waterlogged haunches, truth allows bald bubbles to dismiss themselves and pucker the surface of our knowing lives. Sunken mass. It is clear now. The water has indigestion. The water is digesting something too big for its throat. The water wants to regurgitate. There's a mute sound like the inverse of a docking bell, an unringing. Suddenly, you know what day it is. The new horrible thought. Does a ship leave a wake when it sails downward? The guests have all turned to look at something on the horizon. The whites of their eyes are whipped with sea foam. The jazz band jams low and rhythmic. In purely scientific terms, the underwater part of your brain goes berserk. It starts lighting up in a show of synaptic pyrotechnics with little waiters serving freshly baked thought soufflés up into your cerebral cafe. One of these thoughts, the strings on the fiddle are made of whale baleen. Another, electric eels are locked in a tank in the substructure, harassed periodically to power the kitchen's microwave. And while the iceberg was sinking the ship was sinking the iceberg. Save our souls. It was an exterminatory partnership, an oath of mutual undoing. The berg had split whole plates like cracking into a roll of warm, fresh bread, and the salt sea burrowed elbow deep into a starboard gash 300 feet long. Sauce on the side. The ship's engine death-rattled, spilled its dog bowl of wet Welsh coal. For 258 nautical miles, she had eaten the pellet remains of dead prehistoric ferns, belched out carbon, and now she was choking on her food. Save our souls. Long before and long after her arrival, the ship's exhalations warmed the air, persuading this iceberg and all its iceberg mates to sweat their weight back into the sea. What it put into the sky, it put also into the lungs of the passengers and their children and their children's children, sequestering its warm chemical wind deep within the lung pockets belonging to bodies who had never even seen the ocean. Sauce on the side. Save our souls. So the people built the ship, had blueprinted it to carry them safely across the sea, even as it infected the lovers within its cabin. Violence is a boomerang poorly aimed. The iceberg killed the ship killed the iceberg, and the sea killed the people while the condemned band continued to play. In the meeting between the people, the iceberg, and the ship, none could survive, none would. The black thread of mourning ties itself in a savage knot around the broken hull, the stung bodies, the dissolving berg. The melting of sea ice can be called a weeping, too cold, too hot. The lifeboats too full, too few. The story of the Goldilockian Holocene ended something like that. Save our souls, sauce on the side. Save our souls, sauce on the side. Save our souls, sauce on the side. The guests have all removed their hats. The surface of the iceberg has gone slick. The hems of ladies' dresses squelch lewdly underfoot. Their once gorgeous hair hangs in kelpy, wet strands. Someone pours gasoline down the ice luge. The stab craft walks back into a hole. The music dies and reincarnates as a ghost of itself, the sound gurgling as though submarine. Silly shadows gobble up strands of lantern light like brilliant string beans, and the feverish sea daubs its white-capped lips with the hanky torn of some proud forgotten flag. The night wears a pearl necklace of icebergs, which leak their chilly blood down its breastbone, leaking blood a color that is not so simple as white. The lifeboat glows red and hot as an exit sign. Its diesel engine hisses. All aboard.
Wow. Oh my gosh, thank you, Hannah. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, we're continuing on with fiction here. Our next reader will be Karen Joy Fowler. Karen Joy Fowler is the author of 7 novels and 4 short story collections. And I think an 8th novel coming out soon, right?
No, that's the 7th coming out.
Oh, okay. The 7th coming out. Wow, so impressive. Her last novel, We Are Completely Beside Ourselves, won the PEN/Faulkner Award for Fiction in 2013 and was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Her recently completed novel On the Booth Family will be published in 2022. Please welcome Karen Joy Fowler.
Thank you. Thank you for including me in this amazing evening. And I do see that Michael thinks he's ready to go, so I hope we'll hear from him soon. I'm going to read a section from my short story, The Beautiful Passing. And this story was inspired by a historical incident, a very strange meeting in the 1830s between 2 very famous men. The first of them was James Freeman Clark. Clark was a Unitarian minister and went on to do a lot of work for the education of women and was an abolitionist, worked for many causes that are still very laudatory. At the time of the story, he is at his first posting. It is in Louisville, Kentucky, and much of the congregation has walked out because he persists in telling them that slavery is a sin. He has been called on this very dark and rainy evening to a hotel in Louisville by the second very famous man, who is Junius Brutus Booth. Junius Brutus Booth at this time is arguably the most famous Shakespearean actor in America, very famous. In a few years, he will have a son who will go on to murder the President of the United States. He has sent a message to Clark saying that there has been a death and he requires a clergyman to attend. And so Clark has gone out to the United States Hotel to console Booth. There was something else I needed to say in the introduction, but I've forgotten it, so hopefully it won't be needed. Which is that James Freeman Clark left a written account of this evening, and the part of the story I'm going to read is the part based on that written account. Booth himself opened the door. "Good of you to come," he said, reaching for Clark's cold fingers. "On a night like this, I shouldn't have asked." "Death is no respecter of weather," Clark told him. "Please, don't apologize." Booth was much shorter than Clark had expected. On stage, he loomed large, but he was really quite a tiny man. He was holding a glass in one hand, and he took a drink, even as he shook Clark's hand with the other. His hair was uncombed, and his waistcoat unbuttoned. The room smelled of cigars and whiskey and boiled potatoes. Booth stood aside to let Clark enter the parlor, which was as dark as the hall, the only light a flaming log in the fireplace before which 2 Hitchcock chairs had been set. One chair was empty, but the other held a man. Clark couldn't make out his face at first, only the tip of his cigar, brightening in the gloom as he pulled on it. Rain thrummed on the window panes, and the log shifted sleepily in the flames. "Let me get you a drink," Booth offered, something to ward off the cold. But Clark refused politely. After the chilly carriage ride, he was finding the room rather too warm. "Perhaps a cigar?" Clark refused again. "Do you like the theater?" Booth asked. "Perhaps you think it worldly." No. I thoroughly enjoyed your recent King Lear," Clark said. He was about to comment further on the beneficial, ennobling philosophies of Shakespeare's tragedies, but Booth had already rushed to reply. "Accept my deepest apologies. I couldn't muster the required that night. Sir, I owe you a performance." Booth indicated the empty chair by the fire. More whiskey spilled as he did so. Perhaps he'd been drunk when he played King Lear. Perhaps he hadn't been. No such doubts existed now. Drowning his grief, no doubt. As Clark moved toward the chair, the face of the second man came into focus. He had a thin mustache, a pointed, down-turning nose, and the sunken cheeks that suggested missing teeth. Clark leaned forward, thinking to introduce himself, but the man turned away as if to prevent it. This left Clark feeling foolish, his hand outstretched. He looked around to see if Booth was watching. He was not. Booth was digging through his trunk. Behind him, a large table held the cold remains of supper. On the dark side of the room was a settee, and beside the settee, a small table. Or so Clark surmised, though he couldn't see it. But if there was no table, then over there in the corner farthest from the fireplace, a coffin floated in midair. This odd illusion made the coffin seem like a stage prop, all the more so as the settee was covered with wigs, hats, and cloaks. "Was the deceased a relative?" Clark asked gently. "Distant," Booth said. He was holding a slender book, thumbing through its pages. "Here we are. Your recompense for my earlier failure." He began to read The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. "I can't fully describe it," Clark would say later to his friend Margaret Fuller, "because I vanished. I forgot the man. I forgot even the coffin. The whole room turned cold. I saw the emerald ice of the southern waters. I saw the dead men rise to their posts. I felt the weight of sin around my neck. He loved the bird that loved the man who shot him with his bow." A long silence followed the reading until the log's final collapse into ash brought Clark back. "Sir," he said to Booth in a voice choked with emotion, "I feel now the full power of your genius." Booth did not demur. Instead, he changed the subject. "Let me put to you a question of doctrine. When Jesus multiplied the fishes, was he replicating the same fish many times over, or was he conjuring many different fish?" Clark had a vague sense that this wasn't a question that should be asked, though he couldn't, without deeper thought, have said why. "I don't know," he said. "The people were fed. Surely that's what matters." "Utterly different miracle," Booth pointed out. "Replication versus multiplication. And yet we're kept in the dark, when any fool in attendance would have seen if they were all eating an identical fish, or if some were larger and some smaller. Have you ever read Shelley's thoughts on the eating of meat?" "I have." "Ingenious," Clark said, "but faulty. The Bible is very clear. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you." The rain had stopped sometime during the poem without Clark noticing. The room was silent, the fire all but dead. The second man put out his cigar on the bottom of his shoe. "It matters to the fish," Booth said. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. If you're, here's Michael. Okay. I'm going to just reintroduce you briefly, even though I read your intro before.
Okay, thanks.
But everybody, Michael Alenyikov is here. His novel, Ivan and Misha, won the Northern California Book Award for fiction. He received the Gina Barrio Award. He has a PhD in clinical psychology. He was a cabbie in Boston. He lives in San Francisco, and this is a rare foray into autobiographical fiction set in Santa Monica. Please welcome Michael Alenyikov.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to read a kind of a pared down version of the first half of the story. So I hope you all read the entire story and reach the end. It's called You're the One. The aunts and the uncles, two of each, arrived in the City of Angels on this somber occasion as saviors. He'd have considered them real angels, but his imagination took him to the stars, not to heaven itself. They were known to the boy from distant memories, photographs that accompanied monthly letters, and his mother's stories told to him while she cooked and he did his homework, or assembled jigsaw puzzles to the smell of boiling chicken, seasoned with thyme and bay leaves, the two paying scant attention to the routine darting about of the little brother chasing imaginary friends. One aunt, the prettier of the two, was more familiar. She had come to visit the year before, bringing gifts, gossiping about family with his mother, swooning over the California blue skies, bearing the aura of a princess. He'd sat in her lap at the kitchen table and traced the bridge of her nose with his finger. "Will I have one like yours?" he'd asked. She stiffened and turned red, her eyes filled with tears. He slid off and scrambled away, sensing he'd done something wrong, misused a power he didn't know he had, behaved badly, but not in the usual way, not like fighting with his brother or failing to clean up his toys. His mother, washing dishes, stopped, dried her hands, placed them on her sister's shoulders, kissed her hair, her cheek, leaned in and whispered words in her ear in that foreign tongue he knew as Yiddish, the language of secrets spoken between adults. To him, she said, "It's not your fault. I'll explain later." She never did, and he was afraid to ask, only with chagrin to understand years later. To try to make up for what he'd done, he said, "Come with me," taking his aunt's hand, tugging her out of doors. "Look, down the street, you can see the ocean." It was gray blue and calm, the thin fog lifting, rays of sun filtering through in the distance. "Can you see the ocean from where you live?" he asked, and was rewarded by her sweet smile. "No," she said, "you are such a lucky boy." During those years they were away from home. The place they left was still called home. The puzzles evolved from simple giraffes and elephants to maps where he learned the names and shapes of countries as far off as the Congo and Mongolia. On the day before her death, he had been grappling with a puzzle depicting a spaceship landing on Mars. He imagined himself walking awkwardly in a spacesuit on the planet's dusty red surface, reveling in the occasional giddy bounce. He expected to be an astronaut when he grew up, even if he did at times get carsick. He convinced himself this flaw could be overcome on the day that would become the day before her death, and not just an ordinary Saturday, as he whiled away the afternoon in the hospital waiting room for his father's predictable descent from the higher floors from which he was forbidden. On what was still a humdrum Saturday, he lost himself in a novel about interstellar voyages, but his thoughts drifted to his own past, a landscape which was rapidly fading away. Squat, melancholy buildings made of gray stone and red brick, browned by time and soot, shadowed apartments, sunless hallways and narrow streets, where shiny cars double park, blocking in families anxious to leave and make the Sunday visit to nearby relatives, and impatient car horns reminding errant fathers who'd abandoned their cars and now hurried out from apartment house doorways, while mothers followed with apologetic smiles as their husbands chased down hats blown off in the warm fall winds of late September. In his memory was always late September in the place they called back east, as if geography were a direction in time. On the day before her death, his father was late coming down to the now abandoned waiting room where he was alone with his brother. He was hungry and felt lonely, a feeling he often had when he'd wake in the middle of the night with an ache that was new. He thought to ask his mother about it, but there never seemed the right moment and was put off thinking there's time, there will always be time. When at last his father came down and mumbled, "I'm staying late with Mom," so softly the boy said, "What?" with the impatience of a parent speaking to a child. He searched his face and voice for clues, but there were none. The boy and the little brother were sent by taxi to sleep at the grandmother's sister's, where the smell of the sea was strong and pungent and the cackle of seagulls loud. She was an elderly aunt of some sort. Tanta, they called her, in place of a name. The next morning he woke to the light from the open door. His father stood there motionless. He again searched his father's face. It was a word he'd learned years later to describe what he saw: ashen. "How's Mom?" he asked, tossing the father a question whose usual answer was fine or okay. But the father stood mute. He asked again. "Guess," his father said. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I hope everyone will read the rest of your story. It's a beautiful story.
Thanks.
Our next reader will be Travis Massotti. Travis Massotti's third poetry collection, Narcissus Americana, published by the University of Arkansas Press, won the 2018 Miller-Williams Poetry Prize. Massotti teaches poetry and professional writing at Webster University and has served as poet in residence at the Endangered Wolf Center in St. Louis, Missouri since 2012. Please welcome Travis Massotti.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be out here with you guys in this adventure. I figured I'd throw out my Santa Cruz creds. I taught at Porter College for a year while I was working on my second collection of poetry. Since I moved back to St. Louis. This poem that you guys were so grateful to accept in the new issue, which is beautiful. I mean, just a wonderful issue, full of such great readers. Thanks to everybody who's accompanied me on this journey. Is titled Evidence. I wrote this, I was homeschooling my kids this year, pulled them from the school for the pandemic, and was lucky enough to be able to work from home and squeeze in teaching a second and a fourth grader. And this was part of a lesson they came down to. We set up the classroom in the basement in our rumpus room, and this poem was waiting on the whiteboard, and they had to reverse engineer how it got there as a part of our lesson on paying attention to the natural world. It's titled Evidence. Fungus rehearses its communion underground as night rain coldly taps a wooden cane, and the old hound, asleep by the door, twitches, dreaming the long chase has ended with escape. A peppering of lightning followed by the arrival of thunder. Neither stay. Everything ephemeral recedes back into waiting, while the sun wraps its mallets against the tympani of horizon, and fog drags its bow evenly across the rosin. Each woolen sock slides over a heel. The kettle clears its throat. You take a long knife across a lemon as the kitchen window lets in dawn. You stand there, quietly sipping, looking out. I was going to read something a little more tested, but I figured this is like the second to last poem that I wrote. My third collection just came out in 2018 with University of Arkansas Press, and I had a poem flagged there to read, but hello, we're going to something a little more raw. Its title is called My Story in the Late Style of Fire, which is a title taken from poet Larry Levis from his collection Winter Stars. It's easy to look out the window in spring and think the world is only awful. That even the sentimental tug of my youngest child asking for a glass of water last night wasn't enough to forestall the next plague. That even the humble rising of another morning sun can't absolve the human sin of want. The mud of the battlefield mixing with the blood of the young, full of altruism and murder. The rainforest sparking black and the bleached bones of the barrier reefs and the poisons leaching through every permeable surface. Mostly, I don't know what to make of the world and the coming extinctions other than to step like a human over the threshold into a building on fire. And yet, in this late hour of the Holocene, I watch grackles rifle through last year's leaves and a chipmunk letting his children know it's safe to come out from the burrow. And my own sobriety and family remain intact for the moment. I have to remind myself, against my better judgment, these are no small feats, and for them I am ever grateful. Like a blade balanced on a single fingertip, light breaking and shining in the same breath. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Travis. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, our next poet is Susan Cohen. Susan Cohen has recent poems published or forthcoming in Prairie Schooner, The Southern Review, Tar River Poetry, 32 Poems, and Terrain, whose 11th annual poetry contest she won, as well as in the anthology Why These Rocks, 50 Years of Poems from the Community of Writers. Her second full-length collection, A Different Wakeful Animal, is by Red Dragonfly Press in 2016. I think that's the end of your bio. Okay. Sorry, Susan.
Close enough.
Okay, please welcome Susan Cohen, everyone.
Thank you. I'm delighted and honored both to be in the journal and to be amongst you tonight. And I'm amazed that, according to my screen, 130 people have hung in there and have heard all this wonderful work read. So I'm going to read two poems. First, the one that's in the journal, and then a short poem from my book, A Different Wakeful Animal. The one in the journal is called In Greenland, the Ice Sheet is pooling like tears into the ocean while we are too busy planting the fossil beds with our own bones interred without ceremony. When people die with no one to hold their hands, how can we be expected to mark the end of an ice sheet that melted so fast, suddenly, beyond saving? We have a surfeit of endings we can't embrace in our arms, griefs that we dare not sing in congregation. We are the sled dogs who slog along tracks knee-deep in new ice melt, head down and flooded with mourning. All along we mistook a slippery future for something we could walk across, the solid form of water that began spilling its dirges into the rhythm of waves. Meanwhile, the gravitational field shifts over Greenland. Glaciers become waters and oceans become troughs for the water's dead weight. Seas rise up and our children are stranded in their one time to live. the way polar bears swim now, with no place to go, exhausted as we are. So the ending of my bio actually said that a different wakeful animal won the David Martinson Meadowhawk Prize from Red Dragonfly Press. And this is the final poem in the book. The title of the poem was a headline in the National Geographic magazine. Tips on how to become a fossil. Tuck your tusks under a pillow of dirt. Buzz into the conifers and let resin pin your wings. Trudge across a lake bed, each foot a stylus scrawling. Crawl beneath a coverlet of clay and fire the soil with the last of your heat. Bristle every hair an impression. Harder, textured in stone, you too may become a vestige and outlast civilizations, shifting with continents, trusting to Earth. Thank you. Thank you, Catamaran.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Great.
Well, it's a great pleasure now to introduce Liza Monroy. Liza Monroy is the author of 3 books, including the novel Mexican High, published by Random House, Seeing as Your Shoes Are Soon to Be on Fire, published by Soft Skull Press, which is a collection of personal essays based on, quote, one of the most popular, provocative, and unforgettable columns for the New York Times Modern Love column, and a voicemail from an ex. She lives in Santa Cruz, California, where, when not writing, she can most often be found on her purple surfboard. Please welcome Liza Monroy.
Hi, thank you so much for that intro, Lisa, and thank you so much to Catamaran. The summer issue is just stunning. It's so beautiful, full of writing and art that you'll just be absorbed in for hours. Thanks, it's an honor to read here tonight. I'm going to read an excerpt from my story. It's short fiction. It's called Suicidal Cat Lady. Sasha lay in her spot on the beige sectional, scrolling through updates when she landed on Myra's. Her thumb froze. Hey everyone, I need to go away for a while, and I'm looking for a stable home for my girl, Mavis. Please don't reach out to ask about what's going on. I'm not going to talk about that, but do get in touch if you have any leads on a place for Mavis. Sasha looked up at her husband, Phil, who sat immersed in whatever he was watching on his own feed. Myra's going to kill herself, Sasha said. Phil looked up. What? I said, I think Myra's going to kill herself. Who's Myra? You know, the one I went to grad school with, the one who got famous. Remind me again? The one with the massive installations with the birds, lights on poles in the wreckage. Her pieces were in the biennial right after we finished grad school. She won all those awards all at once, and then she was famous, remember? Then why would she want to kill herself following her great rise to the apex of art world fame? I don't know, Phil. Why did Van Gogh shoot himself? Bad analogy. He was unknown. Fine, then Kurt Cobain or Rothko, Diane Arbus, the same impulse to create, leads some to turn that inward on themselves and destroy. Sasha veered back through Myra's posts, found a quote she was seeking in a recent interview. Making art is the thing that stops me from killing myself, Myra says. Now listen to this. Sasha replayed the Mavis request. Sounds like she needs someone to take care of her cat, said Phil. He turned back to his own feed. Sasha stared at Mavis, a sleek, gray tabby. Here's another interview quote. It says, "We live in the age of distraction. I find that all of life itself is a distraction from the fact that we'll all be dying in what's going to feel like mere moments from now when we get there." Sasha showed Phil a few reels of Mavis. They all had between 1 and 3 million hearts and stars. Fame, said Phil, certainly earns you lots of hearts on your cat reels. She's going to do it this time, Sasha said. She's just trying to make sure someone will take care of her cat. I'm telling her to come. I'll find a way to stop her. What about your allergy? It's not so bad. Lest you forget, when you moved in, I had to give Mr. Fluffers to Steve. Yes, and I can't forget because you keep reminding me, and yes, I still feel guilty and I'm sorry, but Mr. Fluffers was a longhair. Mavis looks hypoallergenic. That's a regular ass cat, Sasha. You're not going to be able to breathe within 10 feet of it. Myra wouldn't own some gross standard cat. So you're not ready for kids, but prepared to take on a suicidal pseudo-friend and her cat? We've been over it how many times? I need to be where I need to be in my career before I can commit to anything like that. Do you really want to be part of that world? Don't you want to just be yourself, do your thing? It's not like we need the money. It was true. They could live off Phil's sponsorships forever, but it wasn't a money issue to Sasha. Once I become a mother, she said, my career will freeze. I'd rather freeze my eggs. You're never going to be satisfied. It will never be enough. You're trying to make it so that other people care what you do and watch your every move, but nobody cares what anybody else does with their days. Well, how do you get them to? How do you get people to spend their time wondering what you are doing with yours? Some are important and some are irrelevant, and no one really knows what magical alchemy makes the difference. Sasha ran to the bathroom and locked the door. She sat on the toilet lid, taking yogic breaths. She focused on the palm tree outside the window, rustling in the California breeze. Phil was right. Why did she keep trying to see herself through other people's eyes? Sasha, it's great to hear from you, came the response. It's been so long. Sure, I'd love to drive up for the weekend and drop off Mavis. Sasha felt a twinge of elation. She was going to reconnect with Myra. Myra Stetson was coming to her house. When Phil got home, they pulled some kale and squash from the garden to cook for their dinner time quinoa bowls. I asked Myra to come. Phil dropped a squash and looked at her. Want me to head to CVS now to stock up on Benadryl? I couldn't just let it go and find out later she killed herself. Phil stood in the middle of the garden, hands by his side in their yellow gardening gloves. A cat? Please, try to understand. Saturday afternoon, an hour after Phil biked off in his wetsuit with his favorite board under his arm, Sasha perched on the edge of the guest room bed to witness Myra's van pulling into the driveway. She ran downstairs and opened the door. Here's Mavis, Myra exclaimed, too joyfully, Sasha thought. The cat leaped into Sasha's arms, on which hives were already beginning to form. Thanks for taking in my sweetheart, Myra said. I bet you had plenty of options. Nothing this good. What a beautiful place. The kind of place people die happy. Sasha scratched her arms and wished she'd done more research about how to stop someone from committing suicide. She considered messaging Phil to pick up that Benadryl after all, but just as soon thought better of it and got to work. So, how are you? Sasha asked. It's been so long. Great, Myra insisted. Never better. Oh my God, what happened to your arms? Sasha looked down. Myra was staring at the hives. Are you allergic? Myra asked. Eczema, Sasha said. I've always had it. I don't remember that. It looks terrible. I'm so sorry. Doesn't matter. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liza.
Thank
It was
you.
so great to hear that in your voice. I mean, what a great story. And next we have Ken Holland. Ken Holland is an award-winning poet who just received his second and third nominations for the Pushcart Prize. He's had work widely published in journals such as Tulane Review, the Southwest Review, Rattle, and the Carolina Quarterly, as well as in a number of anthologies. His current or forthcoming publications are in Pinion, Confrontation, the Louisville Review, Crosswinds Poetry Journal, San Pedro Review, the American Journal of Poetry, Plain Songs, Sugar House Review, and Main Street Rag. So please welcome Ken Holland.
Thank you. Greetings from the Mid-Hudson Valley in New York. If I sound like a Martian, I trust somebody in chat will let me know, though there's nothing wrong with, I think, sounding like a Martian. Great, thank you. So this first poem is my Catamaran poem, Tales from Four Seasons, which you will not be surprised to hear is comprised of 4 stanzas. Spring. I held my breath each of the days, sensed the shadows and sound, the weight of blue air. What was beyond touch became hunger. I held fast to the first depth of light, to the frailty of laughter. I brushed up against the origin of things, then foolishly turned away. Summer. I turned away from the ocean and salt deserts, from airy spaces inside dreams about nothing. Rivers were where I ran, waters swift and sweet, and rain, warm rain flowing to its own conviction. Autumn. I stood above the pyre of a soft, low flame, danced its wild palette, its deep-breathed alchemy, leaf smoke in its spindrift, the earth slinging itself away from the long reach of the sun, chill shapes slipping through early dusk. By whose word did we know none of this would return? Winter. You who arrived so late, you read to me from Scheherazade by opening to the last tale, then grinned as if I would see the humor. And thank you to Catamaran for accepting that poem in the most lustrous of journals I've yet to encounter. So sadly, the social issues of our times have been and seemingly will continue to be with us for who knows how long. This second poem is called Take a Knee. All I wanted to do was watch an old black and white film with you, but the black had been stripped away. Bogart kissing some woman's white lips, Cagney stroking his white Tommy gun, Gary Cooper wiping down the white sweat of his white horse, Mae West casting back her sultry look, asking, "Why don't you white boys come up and see me sometime?" And all those war movies with their white bombs and white blood, and that last hill the white GIs have got to take from the unseen colorless enemy. And it's the best part. It's the scene you've seen so many times before, and here it comes again. You can't get enough of it. Your knuckles gone white, skin gone white, breath gone white from how long you've held that breath. Watching wars, white smoke, white bullets, white fear. Your breath held for 9 white minutes, as if beneath a knee that doesn't know the scene has ended, though the credits have begun to roll, as your heart beats back to red, and the screen fades to black. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. It was a pleasure. Yeah. Well, our evening is going to end with Laura Schwartz and Eugene Friesen. Mm-hmm. Laura Schwartz interviewed Eugene Friesen for our current issue. She's a psychotherapist, writer, filmmaker, and facilitator, and lives and works in Northern California. Eugene Friesen is active internationally as a cellist, composer, recording artist, and teacher. He has performed on 6 continents as a soloist and with a Grammy Award-winning Paul Winter consort. Friesen is an artist in residence at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City and on faculty at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. Please welcome them. Thank you.
Hi, I'm waiting. Eugene says he's on, but I don't see him here.
Oh, okay.
So I've just emailed him again.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So under my email, is that him?
Okay. I don't have his email though. I don't have Eugene's email address. It sounds like somebody needs to email him a link to this reading. Is that something you can do, Laura, or can you?
I did, yeah. I'm going to send him another one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have his email.
I see. Oh, I think the problem is it says that he is also me.
Oh.
It said, I figured it out, Eugene is also Laura. And he says he's in.
Okay. Laura, you can accept the other invitation?
I don't have another one. I accepted. Okay, wait. I don't have another one asking me.
Okay. Are you guys using the same email? No.
No.
No, you wouldn't be.
I just haven't gotten another invitation. He's across country from me, so I'm not. It worked yesterday. There's the email. That Eugene just sent you his email under me in the chat.
Oh, okay, that's weird. This is surreal. Let's see. Okay, Catherine's emailing to Eugene. Oh yeah, Eugene is writing as you, Laura. That's strange.
Catherine's emailing too.
Okay. I know. This is like surreal, Kafkaesque.
That wasn't me, that was Eugene.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I don't know what
can't. Okay. Excuse me a moment. I have to open a different. Let me try. Okay, I just sent it. Okay, that's a good idea if it doesn't work to have him on speakerphone, maybe. But let's see if this works.
So that under me.
Okay.
Eugene is saying, I'm here. Here I am. But I don't see him.
This is eerie.
So I wonder, Eugene, do you see a link up at the top? Oh, okay. Eugene said I sent him my link. So that's what happened, is he came in under me. So did you send him a new link?
Yeah, I just sent out the group one that everybody got. That should have worked for everybody.
Karen.
Catherine, should we just have Laura read from the interview, or what do you think?
Hi guys. Okay, so yeah. So I guess we will have Laura read the interview, and we'll have to end with that because it's just a technical issue because he's signing in as you. Every time I try to invite him, it says you're already on screen.
And if I go out, would that help? Would he maybe get in then?
Well, then you wouldn't be able to get back on.
And then yesterday in the trial, though, he had his own link and I had mine.
But he doesn't now, so that's where we're at. All right, so let's have Laura read the interview, so that because we have a lot of people here waiting, and that's what we'll have to do. I'm really sorry we can't get him on. But if you'd like to just, if you'd like to,
he stayed up late. It's very late over there.
I know. Well,
and,
I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Because he's signing in as you, and it's. I mean, I don't know if you want us to keep trying, but we have an audience.
Yeah, he says the show must go on.
Huh? I mean, the one thing I could do is take you off and then invite
if it's worth it, just because he and I had we were going to do an interview, so it was going to be exciting for you. If
I know, I'm really excited about this.
It's worth
so
trying.
Let's take Lisa off. She already did the intros.
What about, can he go on speakerphone, and he and I can do that together?
Let's see. I'm going to stay on, and I'm going to take you off. And then, right? Is that what you want me to do? Take you off?
Well, one question I had is whether he can join us by phone.
I can't do that. I don't
Okay.
know. Unless he phones me on my cell phone. Maybe he can phone you. Why doesn't he phone you? And then we'll hear, because we can hear you, we'll hear him in the audio. Yeah, does he have your phone number? Why don't we try that? Either that or I have to go off.
I think that probably. Do you want to try taking me off first? Let's see if that works.
Okay. It's going to be great when we get this going, you guys. Hasn't everyone been great so far? Okay. All right. So we're going to try one more time to get Eugene and Laura both on visually. If we can't, that's only going to take a couple minutes. We're going to bring Laura back on, and she's going to have Eugene on the phone. So we'll still get it. We'll get it done. All right. So I am going to remove. Okay. Okay. So whoever. I've never had this happen before, so I'm learning by doing here. But thank you guys. I hope we get this to work. I wish I was more of a techie. Okay, let's see. I know you. I'm going to go with whoever Laura Schwartz is, and it might be Laura, and it might be Eugene. Okay, there is an invitation there for someone, and there's another Laura I'm inviting also, but it only shows one connecting, and it shows somebody on screen. That's what we had happen with Michael Alenyikov. Okay. Well. All right, since that didn't work, I'm going to remove you off. I'm going to remove you again. All right, and I'm going to me and Lisa could read it, I guess. And we can't get them back on. All right, I've sent the invitation again. If you see it and you're connecting, it now says you're on screen, but I don't see you on my screen, so that, let me see. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. There we go. All right, you're with us. Do you have ability to get Eugene on your phone, speakerphone?
I can try.
Okay. If not, I could be Eugene. I don't mind reading out of the magazine. But I know you guys had something planned, so it'd be great if you can get him, at least his voice. Yeah, I know. We had you both on the test the other day. So what was different that we did yesterday that we're doing today? I'm not sure.
Seems like it dropped the call. It's gone to his message machine.
Okay. Would you like me to read with you?
No, that's okay. I don't know. I think.
Would you like to just read both of your parts?
Oh, I see. The cell service was spotty. Okay.
Okay. Would you like to try to read both of your parts?
Yeah,
So
I'll just do
the
that.
audience can get a
Yeah, I'll just do
feel?
that.
That'd be great. Okay, I'll get off the screen now.
Okay.
And we'll just at least get a treat to hear you read with your.
Okay. Move to a place where I'm not in the sun. So I'll just read. Eugene and I were going to do we're working on another interview, looking at sort of picking up where Eugene dropped off in terms of looking at the meaning of music and sound for him. And this is a section that we thought maybe we would do. Maybe I'll talk about the dream. So I asked, what's the difference between you, who knows so little now after 40 years of professional musical career, and myself, who's played my instrument for a year and knows so little? Yeah, Eugene says, good question. Like I said, I've had really successful improvs with people who just started playing their instruments. And in some sense, they're way ahead of us because they're just responding reflexively and they're not trying to remember anything. They're just in the moment in this special way. I said, that's so interesting. What are you talking about? What you're talking about is an important principle in my own line of work. Psychoanalyst Wilfred Bion said, the purest form of listening is to listen without memory or desire. I feel like you're talking about that there isn't a sense that you're looking for something. You're just completely present. Eugene, I think that's exactly where we're going. Because, I've heard great improvising musicians speak of being in the zone. Have you ever heard of that expression? I said, oh, yes. Eugene said, and having experienced that, I know what that feels like, where you just feel like you could do nothing wrong. It's just, you're not playing the music, you are the music. It is absolutely flying out of you. And those moments are rare and beautiful, and I think are the reasons that many of us stick with this unreasonable path for a whole long life. But essentially, I've just come to realize recently that in the whole thing about being in the zone, really, what we're talking about is this kind of non-duality. I think it kind of all comes down to that. Laura, so what did you stop knowing? When did you stop knowing it? And when did you feel finally? You said, I was able to do it because I finally knew I didn't know anything. When did that happen? At what point did it seem to be more that you don't know, and what happened to lead you there? Eugene, well, when I was a teenager, how about this? Let's go back a little. I had a dream one night. I dreamt that I was in heaven, and I was in this kind of darkened sacred space, and there was music there that I was part of, but there was nobody clearly playing the music. It was simply an extension of this being in the dream. And at that point, as a teenager, I loved playing music, but it was also very, very challenging and a bit frustrating. It just didn't come the way that I wanted it to most of the time. So that was a dream that kind of was fulfilled in about 1986, well, exactly November of 1986, when Paul Winter set me up in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City with one of my good buddies in the consort, Paul Halley, who happened to be the cathedral organist and a wonderful pianist. And he just kind of set us loose to play in the cathedral. I had brought some sketches of things I wanted to try and some compositions, but it was really Paul Winter who said, look, why don't you guys just try doing some noodling? Just do some improvising just to loosen up. And we started doing this, and it absolutely took flight. And that session became my debut album, New Friend. It was an album of duets of cello and keyboard. Laura, I own that album, yes. Eugene, that is complete free improvisation, that whole album. There was nothing planned on that recording at all. It was all just jammed down. I realized later that that was a kind of fulfillment of that dream that I'd had as a teenager. And it was an experience that was about I think about a lot, because it was a breakthrough moment for me that had to do with the acoustics of the cathedral and the fact that it was in the middle of the night, because the cathedral's open to the public during the day. And probably the fact that we had these fantastic chocolate truffles that Paul Halley brought, so we were basically drugged. But there is something very otherworldly about this experience of being in this amazing space with an acoustic that just seemed to take the sound and turn it into something like I've never quite heard before. Honestly, it's like listening to the music shape itself. And the music is just talking and going in the direction where it wants to go, and you're simply staying out of the way. This is how it feels. I had no real preparation for improvisation at that level. I've never experienced anything so profound as that, and something that really created a kind of communication and a beauty that just could not be explained. That was a piece of our time together. So thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful. No, we really got a feel for it. No, we did. It was great. And I love how this whole interview explores the artistic process so well. So thanks for sharing a piece of that. And I apologize. We didn't get Eugene on with us, but we got to hear him through years. So thank you. Okay. Yes, I know that was a great way to close. Thank you all for coming and staying with us, 129 people. And I hope that you will pick up the summer issue and read the rest of some of these great stories and enjoy the summer. Thank you all.